We have seen the world heave under the COVID restrictions, and following that, we are experiencing even more strife from inflation and supply chain disruption. Society seems to be in upheaval, with increases in crime, poverty, more persons getting ill, less staff and more work, and more complex demands on the work persons do. To speak with us about this is Brother Faheem Mohammed, Director of the MEI Institute, University faculty and researcher. Brother Faheem, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to the program.
Walaikum salam, and happy to be here with you again.
In the face of all that we are seeing in the community and in society, how do we make sense of all that is happening today?
Well, what we are seeing today is the symptoms at different levels across different areas of society. So socially, crime is spiking because people need money. Price increases in food, fuel, and pharmacy supplies, school supplies, and so on, mean that people have to find a way. And unfortunately, some people choose to do so at the expense of others. The stress, of course, socially raises demands for substances like narcotics, which means more money is being spent there, which increases the level of gang warfare and people fighting for turfs and distribution blocks and so on. So that is also an unfortunate byproduct, but none of this is new. It may be more amplified today, but it's been the case for decades. Economically, we know as well the economy is not doing well coming out of COVID. The recovery is not as we would like. And you might find some companies focusing on or relocating to other countries with cheaper resources and better opportunities or faster growth. Places like Guyana next door, for example. Or you'll find companies struggling to compete with online channels that have much more developed AI and other technologies. Or simply companies competing against larger competition with better funding. These, of course, all have political and legal implications. Things like the ease of doing business, for example, or the political strategy to drive economic performance in certain sectors. But whatever it is, at the core, what we are sure about is that this is a rough patch, and whether it's natural or man-made, we are part of this cycle that is unpleasant because of the difficulties it brings and because of the behaviors that it leads to.
What does that mean for us as Muslims today?
Well, with everything happening over the past 3 years, I don't think any Muslim would be surprised, to be honest, with the state of affairs. We are told in the Quran, for example, that we will face trials in this life. In chapter 29, verse 2, for example, do people think once they say we believe that they would not be tried? In chapter 2, verse 155, we are told we will certainly test you with fear and famine and loss of property and life and crops and so on. So we are told that, and if anything, Islam conditions us to anticipate that we are in a cycle, we are under this period of trial, and that is something that has an effect for a while. We understand that life happens in cycles, sometimes good, sometimes bad, and it's no different from concepts in related disciplines, things like economics, for example, with the cycles of economy from expansion to peak and then contraction and then trough. Or in social change, the rise and fall of civilizations as presented by scholars like Ibn Khaldun and so on. In fact, what we are told in the Quran on one part is with hardship comes ease, or by some translations, after hardship comes ease, in chapter 94, 5 and 6. So whichever frame you look at it through, these are tough times, and it's something that's not permanent, so we have to ride through it and keep it together as we go through this patch.
How do we as Muslims approach that?
Well, as Muslims, I imagine it's a bit easier to treat with, to be honest. In the same way that Almighty Allah tells us that we will be tried, He also gives us a number of assurances, a social contract, if you will, in writing in the Quran, and these can help to frame our psychology and thoughts in facing these difficulties and dealing with them. So, for example, we are told in the Quran we will not be given more than we can bear. We are told in a hadith, when Allah wants to give you more, He tries you. In another hadith, we are told those whose religious commitment is strong will be tested more severely, and the trials to the prophets were the strongest. So there are a number of references that allude to the fact that we will be tried, and with hardship comes ease. And when we are destined to be given more, when Allah wants to give us more, He will try us, and we will not be given more than we could bear. In addition to other references, of course.
Is there something specific that we can do to address the challenges?
Yes, generally we are guided in Islam to focus on a few key things. So in times of difficulty, we need to be patient and contented. The Quran explicitly says Allah is with those who are patient in adversity. O you who believe, seek help through patience and prayer. Indeed, Allah is with the patient in 2 verse 153. We are consoled in some cases that things happen to make us stronger. Allah tells us in the Holy Quran, it might be that you hate something that is good for you, or that you love something that is bad for you. Allah knows and you do not know. So it could be a question of that. But on one part, we need to be patient and contented. On another part, we have to make the deliberate moves to improve our lot and our situation. We are told as well, God does not change the condition of a people unless they change what is in themselves, in chapter 13 verse 11. And call upon your Lord with humility and in private. So we are guided that there are circumstances in which we have to strive and make effort. In fact, I believe it's a hadith, who strives will see success. So that's another interesting point. Of course, some people are experiencing a lot of gain and a lot of benefit in this time. And we are reminded as well, in times of abundance and ease, we need to be humble and we need to be generous. And the Quran is explicit in that. And turn not your face away from men with pride, nor walk with insolence through the earth. We have sent messengers to nations before you, then we have seized them with poverty and hardship, perhaps that they might humble themselves. Quite a number of references that speak to conditioning our behaviors in times of abundance and ease, or in times of success. And at all times, we are commanded as Muslims to have faith in Allah. Whoever puts his trust in Allah, Allah will be enough for him. Quran 65 verse 3. And for those who fear Allah, He prepares a way out, and He provides from sources you could never imagine. 65 verse 2 to 3. And of course, verily in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest. Quran 13 verse 28. So that we are told in a number of ways, depending on what we can and cannot do and what is available to us, or what our circumstances are. We are given that guidance in the Quran.
When your children are hungry, or you have sacrificed whatever you could, this seems like something easy to say, but difficult to practice.
Yes, it's a question of faith, of building your relationship with Almighty Allah, building your concept of Him and your relationship with Him by understanding what He asks of you and what He promises in return.
Let me interrupt you there. What really does that entail?
Well, it's really not that complicated as some people make it out to be, There are some key things that you need to know. On one part, the principles of authentic Sunni Islam. And I say authentic because there are some extremist groups that claim to be Sunni, but their practices are anything but Sunni, really. In fact, global mainstream Muslims more and more have been speaking out against these extremists who have misrepresented Islam for the past decades. But anyway, an understanding of the principles of authentic Sunni Islam, the practices and behavioral requirements or guidelines that Islam gives, beyond the 5 pillars, I would say, going into how we act, how we behave with those we interact with, as parents, as children, as neighbors, in the workplace, and so on. And on the third part, it is helpful to know the culture and history of Islam and of Muslims, beyond the seerah, which everyone has access to and everyone hears about often. But there's so much similarity of Muslims today and the time of Andalus, for example, when the Muslims were in Spain, or with the invasion of the Mongols in the Silk Road, for example, or the clashes of Muslim society with colonial powers in the industrialization era, for example. There's a lot that we could learn from and understand to guide how we deal with issues that we face today, drawing on the lessons from history. And Islam being a civilization of, at the very least, 1400 and plus years, means that there's a lot of material to draw from.
I recall you were mentioning some aspect of this in introducing the Islamiyat program.
Yes, that is the mindset that informed the program. So at the core, so it's a question of giving persons the essentials to live a good Muslim life for both worlds.
I had interrupted you to speak about building the faith in Allah. I was asking about how to build faith.
I was saying that building faith in Allah is one thing. Some would say that is enough, but that requires a certain understanding. For those who are not yet there, I would add building that faith requires a certain independent mindset on one part. You think that you are alone in this world as a slave to Allah and He will look after your affairs. With that mindset, you find you don't really rely on anyone or fear others as people tend to do. Your boss, social workers, your in-laws, or others that typically you might look towards to provide. You depend only on Allah and He will show you the way and He will never let you down. In fact, He tells us that in the Quran, I respond to the invocation of the supplicant when he calls on me. Quran 2 verse 186, or indeed Allah provides to whom He wills with no limit. As well in the Quran in chapter 3, I believe. On another part, what proves helpful is immersing yourself in a community of like-minded persons who would cheer each other on. Not try to fight them down or take what they can. But even if you're alone and everyone is against you, we are told in a Hadith Qudsi that whoever comes to me walking, I will come to him running, and so on.
That might be a difficult thing to achieve.
Well, yes and no. It depends on the life that you live and the circles that you immerse yourself in. We see the camaraderie and reminders of faith, for example, in the MAI classrooms and the group chats, for example, more than we might in a mosque, perhaps, or in a family circle, where you might find a little more tension amongst the members. But in fact, that is something that Maulana Wafi has emphasized from day one when he established the MAI Institute. We are a family and we're all striving to do good and we don't want to conflict with others. So it's there. You have to find what works for you and where it is, and then make your move to get into that environment. I could be reasonably sure it's not going to come to you. So you'd have to put some effort into getting there.
Patience and contentment when facing difficulties, faith in Allah only, and being part of a community that supports your development as key ingredients to help us through what is no doubt a difficult time in our country's history. Remind you, we are accepting registrants for our Islamiyat program starting September the 10th. Find out more or register at maiinstitute.com, and we look forward to having you there. We hope you enjoyed this feature and hope to see you on the next one, where we unpack and explore current issues from a Muslim perspective. This is Muslim Matters, brought to you by the MEI Institute. I am Ahmed Rahamut. See you next time.